Prices for just about everything is rising fast everywhere you go. Somehow what $100 could buy you in 2018 buys you much less in 2022. In 2021, inflation rose at a rate that was not seen for the past 3 decades. So what exactly leads to hyperinflation? And could it happen in the US soon or even at all? Make sure to watch the video all the way to the end to find out how you can overcome such a situation. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you find this video inspiring and wish to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. Let us know in the comment section below what all other reasons do you think leads to the cause of hyperinflation. So let's get into the video. On October 23rd, Jack Dorsey, the ex-CEO of Twitter, sent out an alarming tweet indicating that hyperinflation is on the way, warning that hyperinflation is going to destroy everything, and that it's actually currently happening. Later, in reply to a follow-up question from one of the followers, he confirmed that hyperinflation will happen in the United States very soon, and the rest of the world will follow. Before we jump right into the topic, let's get our basics right and understand what hyperinflation is. We will reveal a few tricks that might become useful for you to implement in your own life so that you can be prepared for if such a scenario ever does present itself. Before we dive deeper into hyperinflation, let's first cover what I mean by the term inflation. So you may have noticed that things over time would become a little more and more expensive. Inflation is typically a broad measure, such as the overall increase in prices or the increase in the cost of living in a country. Let us take the price of milk as one of the most simple examples of inflation. A gallon of milk costs around 36 cents per gallon in 1922. A gallon of milk cost $3.85 in 2022, roughly 10 times more than it did a century ago. This rise is neither due to a scarcity of milk nor a higher cost of production. In fact, the opposite is true. On the other hand, this price indicates the progressive loss of money's worth as a result of inflation. Economists use the term hyperinflation to denote a period of extraordinarily high inflation, which monitors the pace at which prices for goods and services rise. Before economists identify an economy as hyperinflationary, it must have an inflation rate of more than 50% for at least a month. This has been the worst-case scenario for our current economy for the past century, and being able to see the signs beforehand and take the right action steps as an economy is the only way to slow it down or even stop it. However, not everyone was able to spot these signs before hyperinflation hits. For example, countries like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Hungary, and Yugoslavia saw similar signs that we are starting to see in the United States right now. Inflation in the United States reached its highest point in the last century in the years following World War II, when it soared about 20% in 1947 due to post-war supply shortages. Inflation isn't going away anytime soon. In fact, prices are rising faster than they have been since the early 1980s. According to the most recent Consumer Price Index report, prices jumped 7.5% in January compared to the previous year. Since February 1982, this is the largest annualized increase in CPI inflation. Even when volatile food and energy costs were excluded from the so-called core CPI, the picture remained grim. In January, the core CPI increased by 0.6%, bringing the 12-month increase to 6.0%, the most since August 1982. One of the Federal Reserve's primary responsibilities is to keep inflation under control. The CPI inflation report from January serves as yet another reminder that the Fed has more than enough grounds to begin raising interest rates and tightening monetary policy. When we look at the current scenario in the United States, many analysts projected a minor price increase, but U.S. inflation data have constantly outperformed economists' forecasts. 7 of the last 10 CPI inflation numbers shocked economists to the upside, but none to the downside. When we investigate the source of hyperinflation, we discover that it is caused by an increase in the money supply, which occurs when a country's government prints money to cover its spending. As the money supply expands, prices rise in the same way that traditional inflation does. Another factor that contributes to hyperinflation is demand-pull inflation, which usually happens when a demand exceeds its supply, causing prices to rise. This might also happen as a result of increased consumer spending as a result of the economy's growth, a sudden increase in exports, or higher government spending. They often go hand in hand. Rather than restricting the money supply to contain inflation, what does the government do to solve the problem? Yup, you guessed it, we just keep printing more. It's that simple, right? For the short term, it might be. However, as more and more money is circulating in the economy, the prices also increase along with it. The problem is that the more you treat the world currency like monopoly money, the more it becomes like monopoly money and loses its value. You can expect inflation to continue until something changes. Ultimately, it's up to how we react that will impact the hyperinflation and its effects. People start stockpiling today to avoid paying more for products tomorrow. Shortages will result from this stockpiling. People will hold on to their valuable possessions like cars, houses, gold, or heavy machinery that hold value well. The more people hold on to possessions and valuables due to instability in the economy, the more hyperinflation increases. The economy slowly collapses as daily supplies become scarce and more expensive. As cash loses its value, people lose their savings. As a result, the elderly are particularly vulnerable to hyperinflation. Because their loans lose value, banks and lenders go insolvent quickly. People stop making deposits and they run out of cash. So you might be wondering how this affects the stock market. Currency values in foreign exchange markets drop as a result of hyperinflation. When the cost of imported goods rises, merchants in the country go out of business. Unemployment rises as the businesses collapse. Tax revenues start declining and the government is struggling to provide for basic needs. To pay its bills, the government prints more money, which worsens hyperinflation. So the day comes and hyperinflation is now a reality. What should you do to stay prepared? Well, don't worry, we've got you covered. There are a few things you can do to protect yourself from inflation. We believe that planning for the worst-case scenario is a great way to go. So let us hope for the best while preparing for the worst. The thing about hyperinflations is that you'll need to prepare well ahead of time before it's too late. So here are some money practices that will help you get through a hyperinflationary period. First, be prepared by diversifying your holdings. You should diversify your assets among U.S. stocks and bonds, international stocks and bonds, real estate, gold, and other hard assets such as silver, because if the dollar devalues completely, you will lose your ability to buy anything from abroad because foreign currencies will see the US dollar as basically worthless. But what is recognized as valuable throughout basic economies will remain valuable. Gold and silver have been used throughout history for a few thousand years. It is the longest standing money and is recognized by so many different countries. It has withstood the test of time, which is why it is a good option to consider investing in yourself by purchasing some precious metals. The other important habit one should start is to diversify your cash reserves to prepare yourself just in case hyperinflation hits your country. As we had mentioned earlier, if all of your hard-earned money that is sitting in one particular currency and all of a sudden that particular currency loses its value, would result in all the savings that you have made will end up being nothing. However, if you have multiple currencies, it would help you seriously reduce the potential risks. So there you have it. Now you're more prepared than anyone you know on what to do when inflation strikes.